Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Bobble Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. Here with me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we're getting another one of these October surprises. They're coming thick and fast now.
I
Uh,
told you every day, mark your calendar, everybody.
that's right. And the latest October surprise is the eve of election publication of Bob Woodward's book about the Biden administration. And of course, we haven't seen, we weren't privileged enough to get an advance copy of the book. So reliant
Not
upon,
on the list.
yeah,
Not on the list.
exactly. Yeah, but on newspaper reports of the book. So according to the newspaper reports about the book, it's obviously a kind of a whitewashing of the Biden administration and the trashing of Trump, which is very odd because, you know,
It's a book about the Biden administration.
yeah,
Its primary goal is to trash Trump.
that's
Okay.
exactly it. I mean, I read the Washington Post article about it, and I looked and I see this article. There are 17 mentions of Trump, and I was like, well, how many mentions of Biden? 9 mentions of Biden. Well, that's very strange. I mean, you're writing this about Bob Woodward's book about the Biden administration's war. I think it's called War or something, and it's all about Trump. So that's dropped, and with a dull thud on the eve of election. But the most interesting part is that this Woodward has claimed, and of course, right on time, about the Trump Russia connection. And as we'll see, look at it. This is a complete fraud. This is a total fraud about this Trump Russia thing because it's all about somehow he secretly sent COVID testing equipment to Putin. And as we'll see, this has always been known. There's been never any secret about this. This is entirely dropped on the eve of election that there was some secret backroom deal between Trump and Putin to send him COVID testing equipment. Um,
And how many times have they had conversations since the end of?
and then there's also a conversation that apparently they have had 7 conversations, 7 since Trump left office. So let me just
And I'm sure Rachel Maddow will embellish these calls. Okay.
exactly. So let me show. This is yeah. So here's the Washington Post story, which is the usual melodrama. Trump secretly sent COVID test to Putin during 2020 shortage. I have to say, I don't remember the shortage. I mean, it sounds to me like I thought these COVID tests were pretty much available. I mean, not even it was never very clear what the point of them in any case was. I mean, you've got the symptoms, you've got the symptoms. I mean, what do you need to test? Anything.
Well, I
Um,
seem to remember in the very, very early days, and I mean the first couple of weeks, okay, when when we were there was an induced panic, okay? So there might have been shortages, but it didn't matter. It helped the narrative, oh, there are shortages. Oh, yeah,
no,
okay.
that's the shortages,
I just think it was part of the inducing us into a sense of panic.
right?
It's immaterial if there was a shortage or not. It
Right.
was
It was
used.
part of the part of the panic. It's like the panic, that fake panic about the ventilator shortage of the ventilators. It turned out, of course, it was the worst possible treatment for COVID patients, elderly patients, sticking a ventilator down their gullet. But oh my God, there's a shortage of ventilators. But anyway, so this is War by Bob Woodward, traces how Trump and Biden responded to international crisis and concludes that Trump is worse than Nixon, the president exiled by the Watergate scandal. Who the hell is Bob Woodward to tell us whether Trump is worse or better than Nixon? We're not interested in anything Woodward has to say about about Nixon and Trump and about their presidencies and so on.
Well, Bob Woodward was just a cog in the machine.
Right?
He didn't add any
No,
value to Watergate
no,
whatsoever.
no.
He got breadcrumbs and it made him famous,
Yes,
okay? But he nothing genuine, nothing unique.
no.
All he was a cog, and
I
he's
can't.
been riding on it ever since.
Ever since, and what's amazing about these books is they are completely worthless as historical records because, of course, the Woodward style is not to cite any sources. He's essentially gives this narrative. Blinken said this. Powell said that. But there's never a source. So you just simply have to take his word for it that this is indeed how the conversation went. And all that. Let's say it's a conversation with Biden and Blinken, and then Woodward recounts this conversation. Well, you can be pretty sure that the source of the conversation, since there are already two of them in the room, would probably be Blinken. I mean, if it's unflattering about Biden, it's unlikely that Biden would be the source. So it's Blinken. Well, why do we have to believe Blinken's account of it? I mean, if let's say we can figure out, okay, that Blinken must be the source. There's no reason to believe Blinken's account. And that's the whole point. He's asking us to accept all the things that he writes, which is simply one person's account of a meeting. So it's totally worthless as any kind of a historical record. And this has been, but of course, he does this because he makes a lot of money. He's been making money on these worthless books, really, ever since Watergate.
Yep.
And then he goes on, as the coronavirus tore through the world in 2020, and the United States and other countries confronted a shortage of tests designed to detect the illness, President Donald Trump secretly sent coveted tests to Russian President Vladimir Putin for his personal use.
So he sent thermometers. That's how you detected if you had COVID, a thermometer.
It is a thermometer. Whoa.
No better test, everyone. No better test.
No,
Just
no,
you have a fever. Yep, you probably got it.
You probably got it. You're coughing badly. You probably have it. I mean, generally, I mean, if you're coughing in a way that you've never coughed in your life before, chances are you have it.
And George, ever since then, I've come down with cold symptoms, of flu symptoms, and I know the difference between the average flu and COVID. I've had COVID 3 times.
Right, exactly. So Putin petrified of the virus. I love this, petrified.
No.
How do you know this? Is that he was petrified of the virus?
No.
Accepted the supplies, but took pains to prevent political fallout. Not for him, but for his American counterpart. He cautioned Trump not to reveal that he had dispatched the scarce medical equipment to Moscow. And then Putin, according to the book, told Trump, I don't want you to tell anybody because people will get mad at you, not me. So this is really interesting because when we look back, here is the Kremlin. This is from, I think this was from March 2020. This is, at the time, telephone conversation with US President Donald Trump. A telephone conversation took place between Vladimir Putin and the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And it says, when discussing the situation around the coronavirus pandemic, a positive assessment was given to bilateral cooperation. It was agreed to further increase coordination in this area. In particular, the American side proposed sending a batch of medical equipment to Russia. So it was reported then, March 2020. There is no secret here. There it is. It was on the Kremlin website that the American side proposed sending a batch of medical equipment to Russia. And then they thought, other things that were discussed on this phone conversation. And then there is also Mike Pompeo, May the 17th, 2020. So he's giving this interview to the Washington Examiner. So Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State at the time, and he says, Washington Examiner asks, and what about Russia? What is your assessment of the relationship right now with the United States and how they're doing during the virus? Pompeo, so they've really struggled. Moscow in particular continues to struggle with the virus. When the president spoke with President Putin, perhaps a week ago, maybe a little more now, the president committed to providing significant assistance to them, some testing equipment as well as ventilators. That equipment is on its way. We're excited about our ability to try and help them work their way through this virus. And then he goes on, I've worked with the Russians from time to time when I was a CIA director. There are places where our two countries can work together. And then I work closely with them.
Russia came out with a vaccine before the US.
Right. Now, so this is, at the time, this was well known. So Woodward, this whole sensational brouhaha is just fraud. It's a phony. Just to bring up this whole idea that Trump was secretly having some back channel negotiations with Putin, and there's something sinister about it. Well, in the first place, he's the president of the United States, so therefore, if he deems it in the interest of the United States to send Putin COVID test equipment, that's his prerogative. I mean, that's what, elections have consequences. It's your prerogative as president to make that kind of decision.
And of course, the way Woodward uh, makes it sound is that it was sent to Putin personally from
Right,
him.
exactly. That's right. Yes,
But if you look at the record, it was sent to Russia.
that's right. That was the thrust of that's the report on the Kremlin side, and this is Mike Pompeo saying that it was sent to Russia. So where does Putin get? So where does Woodward get to claim? Oh, it was something personal for Putin. He has no basis for saying that.
I can
But
guarantee you, everyone, anything sent to Putin most likely doesn't get there, okay, because of security reasons,
right,
okay? I've been through security checks when Putin is speaking. They don't let anything get through. I mean, it's pretty fanatical. So if you want to give him like a gift pen, it might end up in a Kremlin office, some kind of display, but Putin is never going to get it, okay?
I
Because
think,
it
yeah,
could explode. It could have chemicals.
I think so, and I think
It could have a chip in it. No, that doesn't even happen, okay?
you're absolutely right, and that's a very important point. That if you get to the president, he will always be suspicious
Of
of
course.
a gift. Here's a nice gift. It's all wrapped up in a nice parcel for you. It's personal gift from the president of the United States, and we know how much he cares about you and your health and your well-being. You're absolutely right. It's not going to get there. They're gonna look at it and test it out by themselves. So it's so ridiculous, the idea that, oh, it was a personal gift, and of course, oh, it went straight to the Kremlin in his office. Anyway, this is back to the New York. This is the Washington Post story. 4 years later, the personal relationship between the two men appears to have persisted. Woodward reports as Trump campaigns to return to the White House and Putin orchestrates his bloody assault on Ukraine. In early 2024, the former president ordered an aide away from his office at Mar-a-Lago, his private club and residence in Florida, so he could conduct a private phone call with the Russian leader, according to Woodward's account. Now, Woodward's account is entirely based on this unnamed aide, just one aide. That's his whole story, is just based on this one unnamed aide, because nobody else has confirmed it. We can see in all these stories, nobody else has confirmed this the conversation.
Aid. What does aid mean? Also,
Could
what
be
is it?
anything. An aide could be, it's a very generic term.
Be his valet.
Could be, right?
Aid. The
Yeah.
woman bringing him his morning cheeseburger. McDonald's could be an aide. I don't know.
The book does not describe what the two men purportedly discussed, and it quotes a Trump campaign official casting doubt on the supposed contact. But the unnamed Trump aide cited in the book indicated that the GOP standard bearer may have spoken to Putin as many as 7 times. So all 7 times, this valet or chambermaid or whatever was on hand. Oh, there's an incoming call from Putin. I better make myself scarce.
Well, I mean, if it's that frequent, then is it Jared? Is it his wife? I mean, is this we're gonna have to do criminology now. I mean, who's around Trump so often? Okay, I mean, I don't know.
So
Maybe it's his caddy. There you go. Hey, we're on to something. Okay.
he or she, 7 times was always on hand. When the phone call came in.
Well, I mean, okay, and so what?
Well, that's another issue because so what? I mean, that's what I mean. This is the whole point of this book. I mean, to bring this book out on the eve of the election is, of course, to do what the media have now done, which is to resuscitate Trump-Russia collusion. And that's what the media did yesterday. They ran with this stories of the Trump-Russia, and there was Boris Johnson being interviewed because he's got a book out by Fake Tapper. And of course, Fake Tapper's questions were all exclusively about, well, what's your view of these conversations between Trump and Putin? And for once I had to have some sympathy for Johnson, because Johnson said, well, what the hell do I know? I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know whether these conversations took place or what they talked about. Why are you asking me?
Well, and also, George, I mean, just to, from a very kind of practical point of view, why would Trump want to talk to Putin about anything?
I don't see it. Yeah.
I just don't see it.
Yeah.
I think if Muhammad Ali's daughter wanted to talk to Trump, he'd pick up the
They
phone.
pick up the phone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it would be somebody like that, where he can, for his pizzazz, for his persona, I mean, talking with Putin doesn't add anything to it.
No.
And
And
I,
and
pers
and
I personally don't think he thinks about Ukraine
no,
either.
I absolutely agree with you, and that's another issue. It's vice versa. Once Trump's out of office, I don't see what Putin gets out of talking to him, because he may or may not return to the White House. I mean, so
And
there's no real
Trump wasn't
point in talking to him now.
and Trump wasn't particularly nice to Russia during his
No,
presidency.
exactly. That's another thing. So there's no basis for it other than, again, well, let's re put some oxygen back into that ridiculous story.
All right, I mean, let's say in an imaginary world, Putin wants to talk to Trump, and Trump would say to the aide, "Well, you tell Vladimir to call me when he gives back the consulate, okay?" I mean, when the Americans are willing to give back their consulate,
Right,
maybe that I got the thing reversed,
right,
okay?
right,
I
right.
mean, why would Putin want to talk? I mean, that's humiliating, and it's
Yeah,
against international law,
right.
okay? And the decision they made to do that was baseless.
Yes, exactly. They're exactly right. And there were the 60 Russian diplomats who were expelled over that bogus story about the Skripals, which Boris
Yes,
Johnson,
which included UN officials,
you learned exactly,
which again,
Russian diplomats assigned to the UN. Yeah, yeah,
which is totally different. Yeah.
exactly. So there was no that was, but this is the fantasy world of the media, that they insist on this ridiculous story that they keep up with, this bond between Trump and Putin, when it's obvious that there wasn't anything there, and so there was nothing really to discuss after he left the White House. And then he says, these interactions between Trump and the authoritarian leader of a country at war with an American ally. Don't you see, this is supposed to be a news story. And, there are all these sort of value judgments that are already inserted. The authoritarian leader, authoritarian. Okay, well, that's your characterization, but okay, authoritarian leader of a country at war with an American ally. I mean, what do you mean by an ally? I mean, that's a major value judgment. It's not an American ally. There's no treaty binding America to Ukraine. And then, form the basis of Woodward's conclusion that Trump is worse than Richard Nixon.
Which is a political trope, everyone, because Nixon means it's like being what's the to be borked, to be borked.
Right,
Remember
right.
that? It's
Yes,
like it's like a political term right now.
yes,
You've been
right,
borked, okay?
right.
And so Nixon is just a trope,
Yes,
okay? Means he was bad.
that's it.
He
Exactly.
was, it's always negative, which of
Yes.
course that's even in an article like this, it's really inappropriate and it's ahistorical.
Exactly. Exactly. But you're absolutely right. That's what passes for kind of discourse among kind of similar-minded people to Woodward, these kind of liberal historians, liberal academics, liberal think tank denizens. Oh, Nixon is the embodiment of evil. So anything at all that you can think of as bad, oh yeah, Nixon did it. Or he
And
wanted
also,
to do it.
And also, considering it's Woodward that's writing this, how many times did he say during Russiagate, "This is worse than Watergate. This is
That's it.
worse than Watergate"? Okay, you could get a loop on that on
That's right.
MSNBC
That's
and
right.
CNN. It's like over and over again. And what is implied here, obviously, is that they didn't get to do to Trump what they did to Nixon. That's what this is about.
That's right. That's it. That's exactly right. And then Woodward said Trump was the most reckless and impulsive president in American history and is demonstrating the very same character as a presidential candidate in 2024. Now, let's say he's the most reckless and impulsive. There were no wars on his watch. He didn't get into a war in Ukraine. You can talk about the javelins or whatever, but there's no war on his watch, and there was no war in the Middle East. So you say he's the most reckless and impulsive president in American history, and yet he managed to avoid wars, whereas Biden, and the book is obviously very positive about Biden didn't do that. It just shows, again, the mentality of Woodward and the people around Woodward and the people Woodward hangs around with, and the Washington Post. Oh, it's reckless and impulsive to avoid wars. That's reckless and impulsive. And then
It to be released on October 15th. Right.
that's right. 3 weeks before the election. With publication on the eve of the presidential election, Woodward, who has chronicled the successes and failures of US president for 50 years, concludes that Trump is unfit for office, while President Joe Biden and his team, mistakes notwithstanding, exhibited steady and purposeful leadership.
Okay. Right. I guess I have a different understanding of steady and purposeful.
It was steady. God, that was boy. It was steady. You think it was one fiasco after another. You go one disaster after another, and that's steady and purposeful. And then again, Trump is unfit for who the hell is Woodward to tell anyone whether Trump is fit or unfit for office? I mean, what is the Washington Post cites him as if he's some kind of an authority on anything.
And Joe Biden is
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Vice President Kamala Harris makes several appearances in the narrative, with Woodward presenting her as a shrewd, and loyal number two to Biden, but not an influential voice in his administration.
But there's no evidence of that.
Of shrewdness. Oh, no. But it's interesting that they would put that in, shrewdness, because shrewdness has just never been what you would associate with Harris, but they're kind of making that as sort of as a way to look at her. Because if you look at the Saturday Night Live skits, they kind of present her as this very smart person, and they present Waltz as a kind of a buffoon. Waltz is a buffoon, but they present her as very smart and Waltz as being a buffoon. It's kind of an interesting the way they want to just now think of her.
It's good because they're trying to pump her up at his expense. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Exactly, yeah. That's exactly right. And then the book is Woodward's fourth since Trump's upset victory in 2016. It focuses principally on the twin wars consuming Biden's national security team, and yet it's all about Trump. So it focuses on the two wars, but it's about Trump. And so then it goes on. The book also examines the long shadow cast by Trump over the foreign conflicts of the past 4 years. And
this is a book about the Biden administration.
Right, exactly. But it's the long shadow. The long shadow. It's very strange, isn't it? There's the long shadow of a war triggered by the Biden administration, what he did in that first year in office. But it's the long shadow of Trump. And over the bitter US political environment in which they've unfolded. And it includes candid assessments by Biden of his own missteps, including his decision to make Merrick Garland Attorney General, reacting to the prosecution of his son, Hunter. The president told an associate, should never have picked Garland. Now, that's very interesting the way the Washington Post frames it. So they say, this was a Biden misstep to hire Merrick Garland because Merrick Garland went ahead and prosecuted his son Hunter. So the Washington Post actually thinks, well, that was a misstep. It's clearly a misstep to prosecute Hunter, because
I've never heard this interpretation before.
I've never heard this interpretation.
I didn't know you were on a shit list. I didn't know. Yeah. I mean, you're on mine.
That's right. But there was a moment, I think it was about March, 2022, when the New York Times wrote about how Biden was unhappy that Merrick Garland wasn't pursuing Trump vigorously enough. And that was reported in the New York Times. He was saying, no, you've got to prosecute Trump. What's Merrick Garland doing? But here he's saying his own missteps. The misstep is he hired Merrick Garland, and there was a misstep because Merrick Garland, couldn't just simply let the Hunter Biden thing
Yeah,
just.
well, Garland is going to go down in history as the worst attorney general ever
Yeah.
because he politicized.
Yes, exactly.
He and politicized and invoked lawfare
Yes,
in a way
absolutely.
that unprecedented in American history. That will be the long shadow.
That exactly. That's the long shadow. Absolutely. Um, and then this is New York Times. Book raises unverified claims about Trump's ties to Putin. New York Times always a little bit.
What's really funny, George? The old guy isn't even out of office, and he's already being swept away.
Right,
He's disposable.
right.
He was a place setter.
Yep.
I mean, he can't even. He's still in office.
Yes,
Okay, he still can't get.
that's right. Yeah.
They have to talk about Trump. Okay, I mean, Genocide Joe and Brandon and all that. I think there's a modicum of maybe sympathy right there, but I
Right.
mean, these are his own people
That's right.
dumping.
That's right. That's right. So it says, the journalist Bob Woodward cited an unnamed aide saying that Donald Trump had spoken to Vladimir Putin as many as 7 times since leaving office. Multiple sources say they cannot confirm that report. So we have to keep in mind here, the New York Times is always a bit envious of Bob Woodward. I mean, they're kind of a little resentful. So if they sound a little skeptical here, it's not because they're skeptical of Trump's ties to Putin. I mean, they just don't like the fact that Woodward gets an entree with every president and he has these conversations with the president's immediate circle, just because they want to be part of the Woodward book. And then just weeks ahead of an election, Americans are once again being confronted with a familiar, if vexing question that has never been definitively resolved. What is up with former President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin of Russia? It has never been definitively resolved. Well, the question is so stupid, you can't resolve a really stupid question. I mean, it's just, by its own stupidity, it's rendered meaningless.
Well, how do you resolve something when there's almost no facts to
There are
to
no
go?
facts. There are no facts. You're absolutely right. It was all made up. The whole thing was just made up out of whole cloth. So you say, oh, it's never been resolved. Well, of course not, because it's all made up. 8 years, almost to the day, after American intelligence agencies publicly warned voters that Russia was trying to interfere in the 2016 campaign, which itself was the interference in the campaign, since that was Clapper, and I think it was it Jay Johnson, I think he was head of Department of Homeland Security, they issued that ridiculous statement, which was flagrant interference in the election by claiming that Russia was interfering in the election. They cited no evidence. And there was interfering on the part of to help Trump. It was again, the intelligence agencies interfering. That's the interference. A new attention-grabbing book revived the mystery of the relationship between the two by reporting that they secretly have been in touch over the last few years.
Well, this is fully expected.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, George and I have said that, Russiagate will never die.
No.
Okay. But this is just really stooping to, this is going gutter,
Yes, right. Well, you're right. I mean, this has been an ongoing thing. I mean, was a couple of weeks ago we are talking about the campaign against RT, which isn't even available in America, yet nonetheless they suddenly bring up RT. We got to impose more sanctions. So now this is the Woodward book, and this is a strange. The book is supposed to be about the Biden's wars. It's the Biden's wars, but yet we're talking about Trump and Russia. And of course, they knew exactly that this was the plan. And then it says the book by journalist Bob Woodward cited an unnamed aide saying that the former president and current Republican nominee had spoken with Mr. Putin as many as 7 times since leaving office in 2021. even as Mr. Trump was pressuring Republicans to block military aid to Ukraine to fight Russian invaders, which he
He
wasn't.
didn't.
He didn't.
He didn't. He was
Exactly.
down there with Mike John. Mike Johnson came down to Mar-a-Lago and he gave him an attaboy.
Exactly. That's the, the New York Times just make stuff up. They always just making stuff up. This thing, oh, he was seeking to block military aid. He never did. There were Republicans on the Hill who didn't want this aid, and they didn't vote for it. They voted against it, or the Marjorie Taylor Greene. But Trump wasn't one of them. Trump never said no, nothing for Ukraine. The book also said that Mr. Trump, while in office, sent COVID-19 testing equipment to Mr. Putin early in the pandemic for his personal use. And then,
okay, well, let them read out that we got didn't say personal use.
No, absolutely not. And then, and here's this is kind of Mr. Trump has long courted and embraced Mr. Putin, even praising him as a genius when he ordered a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Mr. Trump has refused to say that Ukraine should win the war. Again, why is he supposed to say that? Resisted
because it's Biden's war, not his war.
Exactly. Resisted more U.S. arms for Ukraine to defend itself, and publicly said that he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to NATO allies that do not spend enough on their own militaries. Now, the thing about this genius thing, this came up in an interview with those two guys. I forgot the name. They're always on Sean Hannity. Clay Travis or Travis.
Yeah, Clay Travis.
Clay Travis and the other guy. Yeah. So this is full interview, President Trump with this like C&B from Mar-a-Lago. You see the date, 22nd of February. So this was before the start of the SMO. And here, Buck, this is Buck, says, Mr. President, in the last 24 hours.
Former spook.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. Mr. President, in the last 24 hours, we know Russia has said that they are recognizing 2 breakaway regions of Ukraine. And now this White House is stating that this is an invasion. That's a strong word. What went wrong here? What has the current occupant of the Oval Office done that he could have done differently? And then President Trump, well, what went wrong was a rigged election. And what went wrong is a candidate that shouldn't be there and a man that has no concept of what he's doing. I went in yesterday and there was a television screen and I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful. So Putin is now saying it's independent, large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There were more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace, all right. No, but think of it. Here's a guy who's very savvy. I know him very well, very, very well. So he's not saying an invasion is a work of genius. He's just saying Biden is a complete idiot. And he's kind of brought this situation about. And, he said, and Putin saw his opening, and it's genius to see this opening.
But the problem is, because George and I think we may not have PhDs in it, but I think we have master's degrees in Trump speak. And George perfectly described it. It's not that Putin, what he's trying to say, Biden is the failure here. Yes. The failure of the Biden policy allowed this to happen, which is absolutely true. I just wish he'd said it that way.
That's right. That's right.
But because we do have a scholastic acuity when it comes to Trump speak, that's what he was.
Exactly. That's why he says what went wrong is that Biden is president. He shouldn't be president. And he's saying, oh, well, he's given Putin an opening. And so and Putin sees the opening and says, this is genius. But the thing is that when Trump says these things, oh, this is genius, it doesn't mean he morally approves of it. He thinks this is a very clever move. You can say something is a clever move without actually thinking that this is a good move, or even it was a wise move. But you say, yeah, this was this. I mean, that's why he said this about Hezbollah. He's made these praised of Hezbollah. Doesn't mean he likes them, But they always kind of quote these things. Oh, he said he's a genius.
It's like George and I when we have an admiration for Margaret Thatcher because of her political
Right,
skill, not that what she actually did.
right, right.
Okay, that's
Exactly.
on par with this. Yeah.
That's right. Um, and then, by the way, this never would have happened with us had I been in office. Not even thinkable. This would never have happened. But here's a guy that says, I'm going to declare a big portion of Ukraine independent. He used the word independent, and we're going to go out and we're going to go and we're going to keep the peace. You got to say that's pretty savvy. And know what the response from Biden? There was no response. They didn't have one for that. No, it's very sad, very sad. So that's what he's saying. Hey, this is a clever move, and Biden didn't have any response to it. But the thing with the New York Times and all the rest of them, they always take this snippet, this little quote, without really giving the context. So most people aren't going to bother looking up what
Like
this person
on the
said.
first day, I'll be a dictator. When
That's
I
right, right,
there'll be a bloodbath.
right.
Okay,
That's right,
all taken out of context
right.
completely.
Exactly. Um, so then go back.
Everybody, George and I have been, watching politics for a very long time. I've never seen a public figure with such determination by the media
Right,
and by liberals to destroy
right.
someone.
That's right.
George, do you think this has any impact at the end of the day? Because I mean, you want to keep whipping a dead horse, and this is but what they do it's for their own kind of
Yes.
emotional
Right.
masturbation.
Right.
This is it feels
Yeah.
so good.
That's right.
They
That's right.
what is the impact? They're so
Yeah.
discredited,
Yes.
and
Exactly.
anyone that's going to vote for Donald Trump doesn't read these
Yeah.
outlets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
No, you're absolutely right.
again, these
Right.
people, because the whole political system exists for them. They
Right.
don't believe in democracy. They want a mechanism that
Right.
affirms
Right.
their power and worldview. Democracy has nothing to do with it.
That's right. That's exactly right. I saw today some story. I think it was in Politico about Trump and the and hurricane in Florida and FEMA, and it says falsely, falsehood. I think about 10 times, misstatement, mischaracterization. I think about 15 times. That's a news story. That's a news story. It's already they're telling you every sentence. Trump falsely said, Trump misstated, Trump mischaracterized, Trump misled. What's the point of this? This is just unreadable. Anyone who's going to read, I don't need to read this. You're just telling me
But what
everything
they
is false.
but what they didn't do, I am assuming, is that they didn't show him saying what he was saying.
No,
Okay, because I don't read articles like that anymore because I would like to see the original source. What did
right,
he actually say?
right,
Okay,
right,
and Trump has said many, many, many things that
right,
are wrong,
right,
that are repulsive to me. But I'm not gonna go along with these people where
right.
all they want to do is to denigrate someone. No, I
Right.
am an adult person. I have a modicum of intelligence. I'll decide for myself. These people like Politico are a
Right.
disgrace.
They are a disgrace because when they say, "Oh, this is false," then you say, "Okay, well, how do you know it was false?" Well, because the mayor of the city has denied it. Well, why you believe what the mayor says? I mean, since when is the word of the mayor, any mayor, is the last word on the subject? And again, when they say, "Well, this is clearly misleading," and you know that how? Well, because FEMA said that it's misleading. So they just simply repeat this. They repeat what government official tells them. It's very easy. Anyone can write a story like that. I don't actually have to do any investigating of my own. I could just simply, regurgitate what government officials are telling me. Um, and then it says, yeah, this is confirmed.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
no, you go ahead. Go. You didn't read that one. That's
okay,
important.
all right. So here, whether Mr. Trump has stayed in touch with Mr. Putin since leaving office remains unconfirmed. Mr. Woodward based his report on a single Trump aide he did not identify in his book. He never does. Blah blah blah. So then it says that the aide described being ordered out of Mr. Trump's office at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida in early 2024 so that the former president could take a call with Mr. Putin. The aide told Mr. Woodward that Mr. Trump had spoken with Mr. Putin multiple other times since leaving office, perhaps as many as 7, according to the book. Was he ordered out each time? Right out.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the aide thought is just mistaken. Maybe Trump was talking to Macron, but he thinks Macron is the president of Russia or something. I mean,
Really?
there's some when you don't give enough information,
Right.
it,
Exactly.
it just leads all over the place.
Right.
Okay, how did the aide know it was from Putin?
Very good
How did he
question.
know?
Yeah. Exactly? How did he know? 7 times he knew this about the 7 times. That this was Mr. Putin. I don't think so. I just don't think if even if the call was coming in from Putin, he would just simply tell an aide, "Oh, I got this call coming in from Putin. It's from the Kremlin. I better take it. Could you leave right now?" I mean, I don't think that's the way it works. Um, the aide offered no further details, and Mr. Woodward acknowledged in his book that he could not verify it with other sources. 19 current and former Trump and Biden administration officials and career intelligence officials reached by the Times on Tuesday said they had no knowledge of any contacts between Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin in the years since Mr. Trump left office, although several said it was not inconceivable.
George, with any other political figure, an honest journalist would say, there's just no verification here
Right,
whatsoever. I'm going to
right,
drop. I'm not going to put it, why mention something that I can't even get in the ballpark with?
right. That's,
Okay.
that's, that's exactly right.
I
That's
mean,
absolutely
that's what this story is about.
right.
Well, he might have, okay. No,
It
but
was
he's
not inconceivable. Well, a lot of things are not inconceivable. Just about anything is not inconceivable. The sun may not rise tomorrow. It's not inconceivable. Could happen. So it's meaningless to say it's not inconceivable. And you're right. What they've done is they've sensationalized this. And Woodward knew that this would be sensationalized. It's going to boost his sales, and the media are running with it. And then they kind of sheepishly admit, well, actually, there's no verification for it. And so therefore, you basically should just drop it. I mean, if you've got one person and only one person who said this, and no one else is able to confirm it, then you say drop it.
it's very much like we see all the time, um, uh, um, I was going to say alleged, but that's been dropped from the lexicon.
Right,
The Trump campaign colluded with Russia
right,
through cutouts, and the Michael Cohen
right,
is reported that he went
right,
to Prague,
right,
and they were communicating with the Russians through an
right.
Alpha Bank server. And at the
Yes,
end of the paragraph, but after an investigation by the Mueller and his team, none of these facts were substantiated.
confirmed. No, exactly. No,
Yeah,
yeah,
so you go all through the whole
right.
litany, and then it's not at the end of the paragraph. It's in paragraph
That's
62.
right. That's right. And it's but even when they put that in, well, none of it was substantiated. They still suggest that it was true. They just say, well, we didn't substantiate it. I mean, something could be true even if you haven't substantiated. So they want to imply that it's true, even though basically there's not a single piece of evidence to substantiate it. So but anyway, Mueller did say in his report that there was extensive Russian interference in the 2016 election. Yeah, yeah, so Mueller, he shoved it in, even though he was unable to provide any evidence for it. He said, oh, yeah, yeah, there's a lot of Russian interference in that election. Um, and then much attention focused on the book's report about Mr. Trump sending Mr. Putin what were then rare Abbott point of care COVID test machines. Mr. Putin, who has been described as particularly anxious about being infected at the time, urged Mr. Trump to not publicly reveal the gesture because it could damage the American president politically, according to the book. I don't want you to tell anybody because people will get mad at you, not me. What is Woodward's source for this? I mean, who there were two people in that conversation. I mean, so what? Or is this Alexander Vindman? Another one of these Vindman listening into the conversation and then relaying this to Woodward? You have to wonder how much input did Vindman have in this book? Because
Or
I'm sure he was a vital source for
Women like character. I mean, I just don't understand why would an aide talk to Woodward? What?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess Woodward is just, he's
I mean,
just
I mean,
trying to.
I mean, George. I mean, I don't want you to tell anyone because people will get mad at you, not me. Okay, well, that's a lot to remember. Did you write it down at the time? Did you record it? I mean, was it a speaker call?
Right, right, right. Well, I mean, the way it works when they have these conversations is that there are a lot of people listening in. I mean, the entire national security staff listened in. I mean, that's how they knew about what was in that conversation between Trump and Zelensky. Um,
Yeah, but
except,
Trump was president then. I mean, he's
yeah, no, but this is also he was president here when they were giving this. This was at the time. Yeah, yeah.
right,
But
right.
the point is that um, they, why if it's just one person who was saying this. I mean, if it's Vindman, then again, why believe any of this? I mean, it's like, because people will get mad at you, not me. But as we saw earlier, this was publicly known. I mean, there was no secret about this. The Kremlin reported it on its site. This was the conversation. The Americans promised to send equipment to us. And then Pompeo, no, he's no friend of Putin. But we say, yeah, we're cooperating. We're sending them equipment. So, I mean, well, this whole thing is just created out of nothing. After reports about Mr. Woodward's book on Tuesday, Vice President Kamala Harris criticized Mr. Trump for being too close to Mr. Putin, citing the provision of COVID testing equipment. Everyone was scrambling to get those kits, she said during an interview on Howard Stern's satellite radio show. Howard Stern is one of these really repugnant figures.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a truly disgusting human being. This guy who is the president of the United States, look, this guy who is president of the United States is sending them to Russia, to a murderous dictator for his personal use. A murderous dictator for his personal use. She just accepts all this rubbish from Woodward for his personal use. She knows that it was personal use. A murderous dictator, and this guy who is president of the United States. You can see that she obviously is suitable for that office. By the end of the day, her campaign had put out a social media ad pointing to the reports. But the interesting thing is that you've already done the Trump Russia thing. I mean, it hasn't really worked. I mean, you've been running with Trump Russia since 2016. You're still trying to do it 8 years later. You still think that somehow that's the secret, the golden elixir of how to win an election in America by talking about Trump Russia.
Desperation. That's all it is.
And then the release of Mr. Woodward's book produced a deja vu feeling for some in Washington. And
Oh,
then
yeah, that's what it was supposed to do. Okay. And it's deja vu for whom, George?
exactly for whom? That's right. On October the 7th, 2016, just weeks before the presidential election, American intelligence agency directors released a statement about Russian election interference. And then US intelligence agencies later concluded that Mr. Putin had ordered the Russian government to intervene in the 2016 election to help Mr. Trump beat Hillary Clinton. The U.S. intelligence agencies did not conclude that. That intelligence community assessment was not done by the intelligence community. That was simply done by Clapper and Brennan, and they didn't, you what you're supposed to do, which is to get all the intelligence agencies, all the experts together, and they have their input. It was just Clapper and Brennan and a few of their closest aides who put that thing together, and they pretty much they had no evidence for those claims. I mean, we read that ridiculous ICA. They talked about RT from 2012. That was their evidence. And then Mr. Trump rejected that conclusion, suggesting that he believed Mr. Putin's denial. So they're kind of jumping around. They're talking about this is the 2018 at Helsinki. While the special counsel Robert Mueller did not find a criminal conspiracy that could be proved in court, no, that's not what he said. He said, I don't have any evidence. He didn't say, I couldn't, I don't know, I'd be able to prove it in court. No, you didn't have anything. You had nothing. And the evidence for that is that you didn't charge anyone with collusion with Russia. I mean,
And
I
there
was,
was and there was a criminal conspiracy.
yeah, that's
The
right.
the conspiracy against Trump.
A criminal conspiracy against Trump, which is what it was. He documented an unusual number of contacts between Russia and the people in Mr. Trump's circle during that came. What is unusual?
What is it? Well, I mean, I've said this before. Okay, well, let's look at the word unusual. Okay, how many contacts did they have with Turkish influence, with Israelis, with Iraqis,
Right,
with Japanese, with
right,
British?
right.
And
British. Yeah,
then give me
that's
a
the main.
hierarchy.
Yeah,
Give me a hierarchy.
exactly.
I mean,
That's the point. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is always done in a vacuum.
Yes.
I mean, if you go from the White House to the Washington Monument, you're going to have close contact with all kinds of
Right,
people.
right,
Okay, I mean,
right,
just because you ate a cheeseburger
right,
next to someone that works for the Turkish government,
right,
is that some kind of criminal conspiracy?
right. Yeah,
Come on. I mean,
exactly.
and the way Washington works, it's all one big drinking party.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. That's exactly right. And that's the point. Let's say, the Trump campaign, Trump was some new figure. There were a lot of people around him, and I'm quite sure many of them were approached by all sorts of people. Yeah, some guy who worked at the Turkish embassy. Hey, do you think you can get your boss to do some kind of a favor for Turkey? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll talk to him about it. That's the way it works, like, or Israelis. Yeah. Do you think you could, work out some kind of a peace plan? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. I'll talk to him about it. I mean, it's like this unusual number of contacts, but they never say, well, what's this? What's the norm? What's usual? Um, and again, it's even on that basis, it's not true. I mean, it was, there were no, we know about Carter Page. Carter Page was not part of Trump's inner circle. And then we know about that meeting in Trump Tower, which lasted all about 5 minutes, when Donald Jr. and the rest of them had no idea what this woman was talking about, which was all about orphans and adoption of children. Now, this is from Bloomberg. It says Kremlin says Trump sent Putin COVID tests while president. So this is basically Kremlin came out today and says Kremlin denies phone calls took place after Trump left office. And then it says the Kremlin confirmed that former President Donald Trump, while in office, sent Russian President Vladimir Putin COVID-19 testing devices during the height of the pandemic. And then Peskov said that the tests had been sent, but denied the book's claim that the two leaders had spoken by phone several times since Trump left office. Again, he confirmed what was already on the public record. I mean, it's, there's nothing really needed for confirming. We also sent equipment at the beginning of the pandemic, Peskov said in a written response, but about the phone calls, it's not true. And then then it talks about Harris. This is just the most recent stark example of who Donald Trump is. And the vice president said people were scrambling to get those kits. And this guy was president of the United States is sending them to Russia and blah, blah, blah. I believe that Donald Trump has this desire to be a dictator. Harris said he admires strong men and he gets played by them because he thinks that they're his friends and they are manipulating him full time and manipulating him.
Well, she's talking about her own candidacy.
That's right.
And I believe Donald Trump has this desire to be a dictator. Well, how did you become the nominee of the Democratic Party?
Right, exactly.
Sounds like
Exactly.
it sounds pretty dictatorial to me.
That's right. He actually ran. He
He
ran and
actually
got
ran in the
votes.
primary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's very interesting because she does this thing. Oh, this business, this kind of personalizing it, and oh, he just likes strong men, and he gets played by him. Hillary Clinton said something similar about George W. Bush. I think and I think it was also about Putin. I think she said something said at the time. Oh, yeah, he gets played by strong men. Because remember, Bush had said something like, "I've looked into his soul," and then and she said, "Well, when you look into his soul, it's the soul of a KGB killer." I think that was those were
Oh
her
my
words.
God.
The soul of a KGB killer.
Yeah,
So
well, Hillary Clinton, I mean, is your soul pure?
chaos. Right. And then it says President Joe Biden also criticized Trump over the report during a fundraiser for Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania. Those tests to tell you whether you had COVID were in short supply, so he called his good friend Putin, not a joke, to make. I can't
Well, I mean, every time it's not a joke. I mean,
not a
that's
joke. Yeah, not a joke, to make sure he had those things. What's wrong with this guy? It captures Biden's incoherence. So somebody told him, oh, there was this, there was this deal for the testing equipment. Oh, they were COVID. These were in short supply, as if he can remember, what the hell was the situation now, almost 5 years ago. So he called his good friend Putin, his good friend, not a joke, to make sure he had those tests. What's wrong with this guy? It's that was Biden. I mean, is he going to now talk about? I'm sure if you could get him talking about those the bounties. Remember, he was in 2020 when he was continually talking about those bounties on the heads of American soldiers, before the whole thing was, of course, debunked. But I'm sure if you press the right button, Biden will still talk about the bounties on American
I
soldiers.
mean, what's behind this? I mean, is it to whip up the base? I mean, Kamala Harris now is leached on to Russiagate. I mean, I just don't see how it lands. Okay, unless you're just doing it to, the people that are singing from your hymn sheet, because everybody else just doesn't care. Okay,
Well,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing, is that you have a completely empty candidacy with Harris, and then of course you have Biden, and he doesn't have any accomplishments to run on. So what do you have? I mean, all you can do is what basically the Democrats have been doing for several years, is just attacking Trump. They don't have anything else other than just to attack Trump.
Yeah, but where does that land? I mean, anyone watching this podcast, do you know anyone that doesn't have an opinion about Donald Trump one way or another?
Right,
By now?
right. I agree, and that's why the polls are not moving. I mean, the polls are not moving, and you get all, you read these articles in the media, these who are anguishing. Well, the polls are not moving. We were expecting the polls
And,
to
and,
move.
and George made this observation not too long ago, and he's absolutely right. For the most part, when you're in October of an election, it's already kind of settling down. You pretty much know what direction it's
Right.
going to go. Obviously, 2016, because the polling was atrocious and biased, that one got through. But most presidential elections that I remember through my life, I kind of remember in 1980, the surge for
That
Ronald
was,
Reagan.
yeah, in
It
the
was
last two
real.
weeks.
It
Yeah,
was definitely real.
right. That one, exactly
Well,
that. Because
Barack Obama also.
right.
Okay.
That's right.
And of course, Nixon in 72.
That's right. That was it.
We
But
have to mention it. We have to. Okay.
but in this case, I mean, it's like, well, if you're just attacking Trump, all right, well, you've gone to, okay, he's a dictator, okay. You can talk about the criminal prosecutions, but that's not really going anywhere. I mean, they were hoping that they would be making more progress. Well, they're not making any progress, so you can't really do much with the criminal prosecution. So you have to go with the tried and true. The tried and true is Russia, and out it comes. But you're absolutely right, because we've had this for 8 years. I mean, if it hasn't made any impact for 8 years, I mean, people are going to. I mean, people are reading, oh, he gave COVID testing equipment to Putin. I mean, why would anyone care? I mean, people want to put COVID behind them. I mean, it's like it was a terrible kind of nightmare. It was such a disaster for everyone. They would sit there worrying that Trump sent COVID testing equipment to Putin. It's just
Well, it really falls into the wheelhouse, something you and I have talked about so many times. Russiagate was a success in the sense that it left an indelible stamp a cloud around Donald Trump.
Right.
It was an absolute failure because it never went anywhere.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so they've decided to go with the latter instead of the former because with the former, it doesn't work. But with
Right.
the latter, it just, adding embellishment to these, what was the term that we had before? Unsubstantiated
That's
or
right. Yeah.
inconclusive.
That's it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's for me politics on the cheap. But anyway.
Yes, yeah, that's right. What's so strange is not just that there was nothing, they haven't been able to substantiate any of that story, is that they keep referring to this friendship between Trump and Putin, which itself just simply doesn't exist. Like Biden says, oh, he's good friend Putin. Well, if they were good friends, why is it that oh, these Putin didn't do anything during the years with Trump?
Okay, I'm sure the parking assistant, what's the term the parking barrier that goes up and down? I'm sure
Oh,
the guy that's head of that at Mar-a-Lago is also a very close friend of Donald Trump. And
that's
I'm
right.
sure the pool boy
That's
is
right.
a very close friend of Donald Trump. I mean, everybody in his mind,
That's
he's a
right.
good guy, a good
That,
person, okay?
that's right.
That's how he's wired. Haven't you figured that out
That's
yet?
right. That's right. That's right. Um, and that's it. And he Trump it's not like they don't really understand with Trump is that he just doesn't have that kind of moralism. He's not a moralistic sort of
No,
person.
he's not.
He's never has been.
He's
So
a total relativist, and
right, exactly. So
the
when you
relative is a relativist when it comes to being good for him.
what's good for him, and so when you mentioned Kim Jong Un, he just says, oh yeah, I had good relationship with him. He's someone I can do business with. Because again, he spent his whole life in the world of business. He dealt with all sorts of cutthroats, people who are pretty ruthless. I mean, it's a ruthless world, the New York real estate. Then he was in Atlantic City, the world of casinos. You deal with pretty nasty people.
He
Um,
probably bumped into the Sopranos every once in a while.
exactly. So that's why he dealt with really really kind of mean characters. So that's why he doesn't think in terms of, well, I'm this very good moralistic person. So he says, yeah, Putin's sort of very very smart.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, George, but see, Trump is an odd figure as he is. Is it? Do you remember Hillary Clinton and John Kerry and Barack Obama? Is Mubarak a dictator? Oh, and they all get tied up in
that's right. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Trump will say, "Yeah, I met the guy, had a
Yeah.
drink with him, good guy."
Good
See,
guy, very good guy, really
Trump
great
never
guy.
get he never gets in trouble that
That's right.
way
Yeah,
because Saddam Hussein. I mean, what was his name that met with him 3 times and gave him chemical weapons
right.
material.
Oh, well, what's his name? Donald Rumsfeld.
Donald Rumsfeld. But
Mhm.
see, Donald Trump, if he'd met Saddam Hussein, say, yeah, he was a good guy.
Good guy. Yeah, I liked him. Yeah,
See, that way it's a foolproof process for
right,
Trump for the
right.
very reason that George mentioned, because, oh, today's friend tomorrow might not be tomorrow's friend. Trump doesn't have to worry about that.
No, absolutely not. And I remember that was in the 2016 campaign when he was saying again about what a really smart guy Putin was, and then he was talking with Bill O'Reilly, and then O'Reilly said, "But he's a killer." And I said, "Yeah, and you don't think we've ever committed murder?" This is complete relativism. Of course, all the Joe Scarboroughs, and apoplectic. But of course, what Trump was saying was entirely correct. And you think we don't go around killing people?
I mean, have you seen these spy flicks on Netflix? I mean, I don't really want to show them as being an icon of the truth, but I mean, that's part and parcel of Hollywood's
Right,
interpretation of
right,
statecraft and warcraft.
right, right,
And,
right,
and, and the real thing, they're all pure. They're all Catholic nuns. I
right.
mean, come on, Bill O'Reilly. I mean, I would have thought, he's a pretty basic guy.
Right.
Why?
But they
Because
get this very
because Bill O'Reilly realized, oh, that's a red line. Nobody goes across that.
that's right.
That's why Donald Trump won.
That's it. That's it. Exactly. And that whole thing about, he's a killer. Well, you just accept things. Now, you don't go around when you're president, you don't call, the president of Russia or any other president a killer. in a way
But Joe
that
Biden
Biden,
does.
but
But Joe
exactly, I was going to
Biden
say,
did.
Biden stupidly did that. And that was a
Leading a
major
meeting in
faux pas.
China. He's a
Yeah,
dictator.
right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. It kind of reminds me a little bit of in Breaking Bad when it seemed like he was suggesting that Gus had killed a child. And then he said, "Are you accusing me of being a child killer? I would never accuse you of anything like that." Didn't say he wasn't. He just said, "I would never accuse you of it. Are you accusing me of being a killer? I would never accuse you of being a killer." That's it. So that's the point.
The best written series ever, ever.
yeah.
All right. I mean, I came across this story this afternoon. I instantly sent it over to George, and what did I write? This will never end. What was
No,
it?
no, no. They,
So we're just this is a perfunctory exercise for us, but actually vindicating the fact that when all else fails, Russia, Russia, Russia will
Russia,
always.
Russia, and we know. So this book is coming out, I guess, in the next few days. So Woodward is going to be doing the rounds. He's going to be on every show, and they're all going to be plying him with questions. Whoa! Now, what about Putin? What about Putin? You think, hey, you're supposed to be promoting a book about Biden's wars, but they're all talking about Trump and Putin. Then that's the object of the exercise, and the media will play along as required. But I think as we're in agreement, you've already flogged that dead horse. I don't what more can you get out of it? I mean, it's done. I mean, it's like you haven't added anything to the story.
It's modern day McCarthyism. You talk to him. Oh my God, I'm going to tell someone.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very juvenile, but to be expected. Okay, we check. We did the story. We had to. We were we were obligated.
Under obligation.
Right. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is what? It's Wednesday, so George is
Wednesday. Yeah.
going solo tomorrow.
Solo, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please join me. Come with questions, comments, criticisms, ideas. Everything is welcome. And then on the way out the door, just think about these ferocious hounds who keep checking the tip jar and look upon the tip jar with bemusement and disappointment. And so if you have a few bob in your pocket, if you've got some coins behind the couch, behind the pillow, whip them out, put them in the tip jar, and then maybe we can lift the spirits of the dogs. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and we might put the dogs into a better mood. I mean, unlikely, but we'll try. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.